Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. We are jumping right into some incredibly high-stakes, fast-moving news today. We're going to break down a recent, intense military exchange in the Strait of Hormuz to figure out exactly what went down, who said what, and where this whole situation actually stands right now. Let's get right into it.
So what actually happens when military forces clash in one of the most critical global waterways on the planet? Well, that's exactly the reality we're unpacking today. We're going to isolate the facts of what just happened between the US and Iran based on the latest breaking reports. Honestly, we're looking at a wild scenario where kinetic military action is happening at the exact same time as these intense diplomatic ultimatums. It's a tangled web, for sure, but we're going to untangle it together.
Part 1. Clash in the Strait. Action in the Strait of Hormuz. To really grasp the global stakes here, we've got to look at the map. The Strait of Hormuz is a highly critical geographic choke point. When tensions spike here over freedom of navigation, it's basically a massive alarm bell for the entire world, right? Because a huge chunk of global trade literally depends on safe passage through this one specific narrow corridor. So keep that phrase, freedom of navigation, in the back of your mind as we go, because it is absolutely the focal point of this whole confrontation.
Moving on to Section 2, the military breakdown, CENTCOM's report on the incident.
Okay, 3. According to official military reports, exactly 3 U.S. Navy destroyers came under fire during this incident. We're not talking about a single boat caught in some minor misunderstanding here. Military officials confirmed that 3 distinct, massive Navy ships were actively targeted. It really highlights the sheer magnitude of the threat that was out on the water that day. And based on U.S. Central Command statements, this whole thing unfolded incredibly fast. Step 1, as we just mentioned, 3 U.S. Navy destroyers were targeted. Step 2, CENTCOM confirmed that 0 U.S. vessels were hit or damaged. American forces successfully knocked out those inbound threats. And then, Step 3, the escalation. The U.S. military didn't just sit back and play defense. They actively retaliated. U.S. forces targeted and took out Iranian missile and drone launch sites. So it went from an inbound attack to a successful defense straight into a kinetic military counterstrike, just like that.
Which brings us to Section 3, a fiery presidential warning, the U.S. political response.
Now, shifting gears from the tactical military report over to the political rhetoric, the U.S. president confirmed the military outcome, saying, and I quote, "They trifled with us today, we blew them away." But then, the rhetoric pivots into this incredibly stark warning about the future. He stated that if an agreement isn't signed fast, or if the ceasefire is broken, you're just going to have to look at one big glow coming out of Iran. That is a direct, explicitly stated threat of massive retaliatory destruction. It definitely shifts the whole situation way beyond your standard diplomatic posturing.
Section 4. Iran's counterdemands, the diplomatic ultimatum. Now, on the other side of this exchange, we have Iran's UN ambassador. They stated that they are ready to allow freedom of navigation, but only if 3 very specific conditions are met. First, the war permanently ends. Second, a deal is actually made. And third, the U.S. lifts its blockade. So they are tying the safe passage of global shipping directly to these massive geopolitical concessions. It's a strict, hardline ultimatum placed right on the table in response to all this ongoing tension.
Finally, Section 5. What happens next? The fragile ceasefire.
When you actually assess the current status of the conflict, it perfectly maps out just how fragile this entire situation is. Look at it. On one side, you have this heavy U.S. military display, destroying launch sites and issuing presidential warnings of massive further destruction. On the flip side, you've got Iran's stance, which is strict conditional diplomacy, essentially tying freedom of navigation to their specific demands. They are just miles apart in their rhetoric and their goals. And yet, astonishingly, despite the targeted destroyers, the destroyed missile sites, and the heavy ultimatums, a ceasefire technically remains in place. It is an incredibly delicate balancing act right now.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. With a ceasefire literally hanging by a thread amid heavy military warnings and strict diplomatic ultimatums, what will it actually take to secure lasting peace in the Strait? As you think about the global stakes here, consider just how quickly diplomatic words can turn into kinetic action on the water. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep digging into the facts, and I'll catch you next time.